Thanks for rising up. I'm Ennis. Welcome to December and our final episode of 2019. What a year we've had. Lots of ups, lots of downs. And now I'm asking you, what are you going to do in 2020? Are you going to sit by and let things happen? Or are you going to rise up and make a difference? The impeachment of President Donald Trump by the House of Representatives appears imminent. But even if it happens, removal following a trial in the United States Senate is considered unlikely, at least at this moment as we record this episode. Members of Congress, including our own Representative John Larson, took time during the Thanksgiving recess to hold public forums on the issue. How would you vote if you could? Take my unscientific poll. Should Donald Trump be impeached, removed, or do you think we should just let the voters decide the fate of the 45th President of the United States next November? There's also an option to vote that you don't really care either way. You'll find the poll on Twitter at RiseUp. I'll bring you the results in our next episode. Here in West Hartford, the new town council was sworn in last month with a 6-3 Democratic majority, preserving a 2-decade run as the town's dominant party. But the council's vote to choose its mayor and deputy mayor, what the town charter calls council president and vice president, was a point of controversy in our town. And not for the first time, the Democrats are in hot water over what appears to be backroom dealings. Is it just sour grapes, or is this just business as usual? We'll talk to an insider who's now an outsider about all this. Also, I just want to take a moment to note that the annual Transgender Day of Remembrance has come and gone, a solemn occasion in which people all over the world gathered to pay respect to the hundreds murdered because of who they are. My guest for this episode joined me by remote. Janée Woods-Weber campaigned for a seat on the town council this fall. It was her first ever election, running as the first ever candidate from the Connecticut Working Families Party, where she serves as co-chair. Last year, she pushed for paid family and medical leave and a $15 minimum wage while serving as an appointee to the Governor's Transition Policy Committee for Women and Girls. Janée is the Director of Organizational Culture at the William Casper Graustein Memorial Fund, a philanthropic organization that focuses on equity and education. She's also a mom to 2 kids. I am so glad to finally talk to you on my show. Before we get into why you ran, I want to know what that was like for you in terms of the decision to just run. I mean, that has to be a challenge to think, I'm going to put my name out there as a candidate for office.
It is a big decision. It's a decision that I did not take lightly. It was a decision that took quite some time, years really, to make. I ultimately decided to run because I had been asked by several people in the community to run. And like most women, needed to be asked multiple times and encouraged multiple times to run. On average, a woman needs to be asked 7 times before she decides to run for office.
Why 7 times?
Because we underestimate our ability. We think we're not ready. We think that we don't have the expertise. We think people won't vote for us. None of that is true. We have the expertise, people will vote for us, and we are ready. So I decided that I needed to prepare myself to run. So I applied for Emerge Connecticut, which trains Democratic women to run for office, and I was accepted into the first cohort. And we did about 70 hours of training. So 70 hours of training. We met every weekend from I think January through March, perhaps early April. And we covered all the ins and outs of working on a campaign, running a campaign, messaging, everything. Campaign finance, fundraising, door knocking, everything. So that I really could get a clear sense of what it took. And I decided I can do this.
Now, this was not your first brush with support of the Working Families Party. I actually saw on your social media that you supported them on the ballot in 2017.
I have for a long time. I am a registered Democrat, so we'll say that, and I'm proud to be a Democrat, but I've always considered myself to be a working families Democrat because I believe in centering racial justice and economic justice in all of our democratic principles and values, and we should vote that way. And I have long supported my preferred Democratic candidates on the Working Families Party line whenever there was an option to do so. So I was very pleased to join the state committee for the Working Families Party a couple of years ago, and most recently, a couple months ago, I was voted in as co-chair of the state committee, and I was incredibly proud to run as the first working families only candidate for the West Hartford Town Council.
Now that caused a little bit of controversy.
Controversy? I guess that would depend on who you talk to. I thought it was actually an act of supporting a robust democracy.
Do you feel that you were treated fairly? Because how should we put it? There was scuttlebutt that you were abandoning your Democratic roots.
I did not abandon my Democratic roots, and in fact, when I campaigned, where praise was to be given to our Democratic candidates and current town councilors who are Democratic, I gave that praise. We do live in a well-run community, but that does not mean that there isn't room for improvement. And there is always more room in this country, in the state, in our community to center the needs of people who are existing on the margins or who feel left out by the traditional political process.
Did you
and
feel
I wanted to be a voice for
Did
them.
you feel the council candidates were not representing those voices?
I was told by many people in community that they did not feel represented by those voices. And also I made a decision to run the Working Families Party line as well because of our minority party rule.
Didn't you try to be a Democratic candidate?
I did.
How'd that work out?
I was not endorsed by the town committee.
I was wondering what your thoughts are in terms of how that came to be.
In what regard?
Did you see the process as transparent?
The process for...
How the candidates were chosen?
It was not as transparent as I would have liked for it to be. And I think that has been the case in previous elections. I don't think that there was enough opportunity for people who were interested in the seat to really share their perspectives and their viewpoints with the body of the Democratic Town Committee before the leadership of the Town Committee held their interview process and then made their endorsements. And I had always intended, if endorsed, to seek the cross-endorsement of the Working Families Party because we have fusion voting. But without that Democratic endorsement, I was still able to pursue the Working Families Party endorsement. I still went through the same process that every other candidate seeking an endorsement from Working Families Party went through. Even though I sat on the state committee, I did not automatically assume that they would grant me the endorsement, so I filled out the questionnaire, I had the interview, just like everyone else, and thank goodness they endorsed me, because wouldn't that have been embarrassing?
Well, it would have meant the end of a very short but brilliant career, but
Yes.
At the same time, I don't get the sense that you're all about running for office, you're about running on issues.
I am about issues.
Tell me some
and
of
I'm
them.
about the community, I'm about people.
Yeah.
How do we create a place where everyone belongs, where everyone is protected, where everyone has access to opportunity, and where the resources that we have are being used in ways that, one, protect our environment, two, help create a higher standard of living for everyone, and three, ensure that future generations are able to also live a good life.
Why does the Working Families Party exist? Isn't the Democratic Progressive Party, especially in West Hartford, aren't they for the same causes?
Many people are. However, the Working Families Party exists, well, for a number of reasons, but a big reason is because of the explicit centering of economic justice and racial justice in all issues. And that is not a place that the Democratic Party often leads from.
Yeah.
We tend to lead from that space. And that's why we often support Democratic candidates with whom we are aligned on issues. And we are there to remind them, hey, please make sure we talk about the economic justice component of this piece of work. For example, when we talk about the fight for 15, we now have $15 minimum wage. A lot of people think, oh, that's really wonderful for, single moms or people who work in fast food restaurants, etc. It also helps uplift the numerous Black and brown women who tend to exist in these lower wage jobs.
On the margins.
Yes. The majority of people holding those low wage jobs are Black and brown women.
So let's talk about town council. We've got 5 white men. We've got 6 Democrats altogether. We've got 4 women, one of whom is a woman of color. We've got 3 Republicans. We had one of 4 women on the council and one of only 2 gay members, Beth Kerrigan, but she's no longer deputy mayor. You and I were in the room when Beth Kerrigan spoke about the controversy, for lack of a better word, about all the things that she wanted to answer. Let's take a look at that now.
I want to thank my fellow councilors and congratulate our newly elected Deputy Mayor, Leon Davidoff, who, even though we had our differences, no doubt he will serve this town, this party, everyone to his best, and I have full confidence in him. Apologize that Mayor Cantor's not here, Ben Winograd isn't here, but no doubt we're a strong team. This is what democracy looks like. It's a bunch of people coming together to do something that's a little bigger than themselves. They're willing to devote time and energy and even money. Sometimes that happens, and that's the part I hate. We need to get rid of Citizens United, but that's for another day. But we bring democracy to life. Thank you to the West Hartford Democratic Town Committee, whose charge it is to be sure that Democrats are elected all the way down the line, in the town, in the state, and in the federal government, in the United States of America. How's that? And we can't afford another defeat. No. Literally, America cannot afford another defeat. Amen. So we have to work really hard in 2020. We need to stop the use of the White House as a marketing arm for Trump's profits. And we could really use everyone's help. No one enjoys being uncomfortable. But we need to learn to become comfortable with being uncomfortable. And I think that was what was highlighted during this whole thing. We need to talk about things like conversations about what our spouses are putting on Facebook and how we feel about them. We need to talk about opportunities to advance our own agenda. I don't want to bring any missteps into this conversation because your town councilors that you elected, which we appreciate, are getting together as a group to hash out whatever shit is still out there. And we walk out that door where everything's behind us. Okay, so... But I need to talk a little bit about something that went out there that called into question my personal and professional ethics. It's something I take very seriously. So I'm going to talk about a couple issues, and the problem is, I did not hear these from my fellow candidates, my fellow councilors now. I heard these from constituents who, fortunately, for me, took the risk of sharing what they were hearing from other elected officials about things that I had done that they did not like. Part of our challenge here is to open up that conversation. If Leon or Liam or Ben or Carol or Sherry or who else is here?
You.
Oh, me. Well, I got a lot of shit with myself. I'll deal with that with therapy. But we need to be comfortable broaching that subject. So, 2 concerns. I heard one thing having to do with Chief Reddick, that I had tried to use my political power to do something that someone wouldn't do for someone else. And I will say this, when I heard that, I was so hurt. Because I tried my best to be sure that there's no political power, so don't even, that's a myth. But I always try my best to be filled with as much integrity, as difficult it is as possible. And so when I heard this, and one of the things had to do with Stoneham Drive, and we all are familiar with the tragedy that happened on Stoneham Drive. And what happened, you're all familiar with what happened, okay. I got a call from an individual in crises. The dad was at the hospital. The daughter had died, the son was in bad shape, and the wife was on death's door, expected to die, asking for help because the dad, whose only surviving family member at this time, he could not see, and he was in crises. So I picked up the phone, I called Sherry Cantor, I left a message, didn't get to talk to her. So then I chose to call up Chief Reddick, not as the deputy mayor, as Beth Kerrigan, who cares about this guy who just wants to see his surviving son. And Chief Reddick went over the policies of the police department. This guy is so calm, such reserve. I really am a big fan of Chief Reddick. And he explained to me the protocol. This is a murder investigation. We need to work through it. And so I immediately called up the individual who had asked me to sort of intervene on their behalf and said, this is on my hands. There's nothing I can do, because our fear was that, and this happens often in life, somebody's sitting in the police department that doesn't know, oh, I forgot I didn't make that communication to the hospital that we need to give them permission. Because what the hospital was saying is, we need permission from the police chief. The police chief didn't get it. It could have been just a matter that he didn't know. So that was that. There was another issue concerning my family. and there was a post that went out, a missing person post, and it was called into question that they did it before the 24 hours. And again, what I didn't want anyone to look at me and think that my family was more important than their family. And so Chief Reddick and I sat, and I wanted to know that that wasn't the case. And he assured me that there's a protocol, again, for first-time runners, for custody battle, for kids in trouble, that was not the case. And then there was one with Tom Moore. And again, it was a family member. And I went to Tom Moore, not as your deputy mayor, but as a parent of a child who needed some help. Tom Moore, when I said, did I lose your respect? And he said, because I went up the chain of commands. I didn't go from teacher to principal. I did all the way up to Gretchen Nelson, and the next stop was going to be Tom Moore. And I asked him this past week when I learned of this, and he cracked up laughing. He said, if you had used any political power that you don't have any, you would have gotten what you asked for, but you didn't. What I had to do was hire an attorney to help me get what I wanted to do. So I just want, and I beg of you, if you have any concerns about my integrity, about the counselor's integrity, about anybody, the best thing you can do, I'm so thankful for these constituents who took the time, because it's a risk on their part. I don't want to say that. What if she did do that? Then she's going to be guilty. She's going to feel horrible. I don't want to bring it up. Nobody wants to talk about it. But they shared with me what they were hearing and allowed me the opportunity to be sure that these weren't true. So I encourage you to make necessary calls and seek truth. Never rely on hearsay. It takes more time and energy to seek the truth, but always it's worth the investment. My commitment to the residents and to the business owners in West Hartford, regardless of my title, remains steadfast. I'm looking forward to your engagement in the process, because without it, our democracy will die and all of West Hartford will not be served. Our honesty is what will unite us in our common goal in West Hartford. So thank you.
So what did you think of what Beth said?
Beth speaks from the heart, and I do think that a call for more transparency is the correct call. A call for more inclusion is the correct call. And also, we need to have a hard conversation about how these decisions get made, who gets to be part of these decisions, and then, of course, how these decisions are publicized to the people who need to know about them.
I have to say, I was very impressed with Liam Sweeney. When I put out an email saying, what the heck is going on? What is this? Liam was the first person to call me. And Liam was the only person who stood up and apologized for what he said was childish behavior. Let's take a look at that part in Ariel.
There's a lot of stuff that went on that put a lot of the work that everyone in this room did and made it look bad. And I apologize for that. I think that we all could have handled this situation better. We all worked really, really hard, and I want to say sorry, because every one of you looked bad because we made you look bad, and we acted like children, and we need to move forward. And I think that's what I hope to accomplish here today. I've talked with Beth. We've talked about moving forward and having a conversation amongst our teammates.
And I always do everything I'm told, so that's, I'm joking, sorry. Too soon. I'm sorry.
Too soon.
Sorry, trying to lighten it up. You're
Sure.
being very hard on yourself, seems like, or us. We're good.
But so I just want to, but everyone's heard it, everyone's seen it. So let's just be real. It's on us, and let's move forward.
So were you impressed with Liam, or what was your reaction to Liam's statement?
Liam, no one will ever doubt that Liam is a person who cares very deeply about West Hartford. I mean, that's, his number one calling card to the community is, I grew up here, I love this community, and he's sincere in it. I do think, however, you said that you emailed Liam and he called you.
Yeah. I actually emailed everybody,
Right.
the entire town committee.
Right, and I'm really happy that he responded back to you with what you feel is an adequate explanation. But again,
No, it wasn't adequate.
okay. Well, with some kind
It
of
wasn't adequate.
response.
It was the fact that he even took the
Right,
effort.
with some kind of response. But also, again, you are a person with access, and you have the privilege of being able to be in communication.
I grant you
I
that.
think that for people who are on the inside, like I could have called Liam and said, "Hey, what's up?" If I wanted to.
Right.
But what about all of the other folks? And this is part of what I'm talking about when we talk about transparency and making our local democracy more robust. It shouldn't be about the 40 people who are sitting in the room at the DTC It should be about the whole broader community. And what happened around Beth Kerrigan's seat became a much broader issue, and the community was concerned and wanted to know. I voted, and my expectation was that my vote for Beth would be counted in the way that I intended for it to be counted. And I don't feel that my voice is being heard in this moment, because a lot of people went out and voted for Beth Kerrigan because of the way that they feel she has conducted herself as a deputy mayor for several years. And people were wondering, why was the decision made to remove her from that position? And people wanted to know, what was the rationale? And they were not given a response. And that lack of transparency is what bothers a lot of people.
Do you think that the town charter should be amended so that the power to make the president and vice president appointed is in the power of the people, or should it remain with the council and they get to vote?
I think it's always a good opportunity when we're talking about our elected officials to put the power in the hands of the people.
What I've noticed in my very short time being an alternate, a permanent alternate for District 1 in the West Hartford Democrats, is that every time a seat comes up, it seems as if there isn't really a selection process that's transparent. When State Senator Derek Slapp was elected to that position, replacing Beth Bai, we had an opening for a House rep, the Assembly, and the next thing we knew, the seat was already chosen. I love Miss Exum. I think Tammy Exum is fantastic.
She's wonderful.
My son and her son play, and they go to the same school, and they're great kids and a great family. So no slam against Tammy Exum, but there were people standing up, people of color, mostly women of color, standing up at the meeting saying, where was this selection process? How come we didn't get a vote? How come we didn't get a chance? Why were we not considered? Why was this so, for lack of a better word, an old boys club? And let's face it, it's not all boys, but the people who make these decisions are not the rank and file. And I'm just curious as to whether you think that that's systemic. Is that part of West Hartford? Is that something that just is because it's the way it is?
That's a good question. With respect to the race for the Senate 5th, it was not as transparent as we would have hoped, particularly for those of us who would have liked to have been considered. There does seem to be an element of gatekeeping here, and I don't think that it is particular to the West Hartford TTC. I believe that this is true across all levels of the government. And this is why we really need to be pushing for a more inclusive way of choosing who we want our local leaders to be, and really respecting the folks who stand up and say, I have lived experience, or I represent a different voice or a different viewpoint. I'm qualified and I'm here. I would like an opportunity to present myself to the people so that the people can choose. This is the way a lot of the work has traditionally been done, and so it may not feel as if it's exclusionary. It may not be obvious to a lot of folks, regardless of their background. Those of us who are Black or brown or who are women, we feel it more acutely because it is directed toward us. So that's why we need to shine a spotlight on the way that the political process happens in our communities, so that people who want to be a part of our local democracy are able to understand, one, how it works, and when they show up, feel like they are welcomed and included in meaningful ways.
What's next for you? What's going to happen now? My first question, of course, is related to, will you continue to work with the Democrats? And what if they tell you you can't? And second, what else are you doing? You're here at Goodwin College. I'd like to hear more about what you're doing here.
I'm always willing to work with Democrats. I am a registered Democrat. I am a Working Families Democrat. I am proud to be aligned with Working Families Party, and I am also proud to be with the Democrats. So yes, I would love to continue to work with Democrats, and I have tried to work with Democrats in the past. The lack of relationship there, I don't believe, was because of my actions.
You are a busy woman. I mean, let's face it, I could barely squeeze this 15 minutes with you. What else are you doing these days? What are you doing besides all the things I mentioned in your intro?
Oh, goodness.
Deep breath.
So many things. I am continuing to look forward to 2020, really thinking about how do we continue to build progressive political power in our community, in our district, in our state. One of the things that I really learned, that I knew before, but I was so happy to really get a much deeper sense of and a real confirmation when I was out knocking doors, is that people are eager for our elected officials to really fully embrace and center economic justice, racial justice, and climate justice. These are issues that people care about. So I'm excited to continue to work and to organize around these issues and to build relationships with people and coalitions and organizations who are focused on that with an eye towards the next upcoming election season. I am also thinking about where do I go from here. I did not win a seat on the town council, but 2,343 people came out and filled in the little circle next to my name on row C. And I don't think that it is simply because they were voting for me. They made an intentional choice to skip all the way down to row C to fill in that little bubble because they were voting for change. They were voting for a different way of doing business. They were voting for progressive values. They were trying to send a message to Republicans. We do not like your agenda at the national level. They were trying to send a message to Democrats. We like you, and there's a lot of room for improvement here.
Do more.
Yes.
Yeah.
And those people still exist in our community, and I think that there are a lot more of us. And we need to find ways to have our voices heard. So I'm excited to work on building ways to amplify those voices.
Will you run again?
Time will tell.
You are the epitome of rising up. Thank you very much for taking the time today.
Thank you, Don.
Thank you to Janée Woods-Weber for joining me for this final episode of 2019. I'm Dawn Ennis. Remember, you can find links on Rise Up with Dawn. You can find out more about my guests and past episodes. Plus, you can reach out to me and talk about what we want to do in 2020. Don't forget to take part in our poll on Rise Up with Dawn on Twitter. That's the end of this episode. Make sure you like, share, and subscribe, and continue to rise up in 2020.